Hello, hello, and welcome to the show because you are now tuned into a brand spanking new Monday Night Live. That's right. AKA the Hangout Stream, AKA the Chill Stream, baby. All fired up and ready to have some fun for August 7th, 2023, and brought to you by yours truly, the man broadcasting from behind the curtain. You know who I am. Because if you don't know by now, you can visit www.livefreeliverich.com or simply Google his name and you can find out. How all you fine folks doing tonight? This is what I have lined up for the show. It's going to be a nice full show tonight. I am looking forward to this one quite a bit. So I have you guys. Let me start off with a question. All right, let me start off with a question. Do you guys like anime? Huh? Do I have some weebos in the house? I guess we'll find out during our featured media tonight. And for you lazy bones out there, I've got a motivational essay all lined up for reading time. I'm also going to be taking some time to talk about special interest groups during tonight's hot topic discussion, as well as making a special announcement about a hot new project on Indiegogo and Fund My Comic. But before I get to all that, I'd like to take this time, slide right inside my first segment of the night, where I like to shine a spotlight on some books. That's right. That are currently available or coming soon to an online store near you. Yes, it's true. First up tonight, I have from Twitter, from Paul Leone, says The Third Crown and Other Weird Tales. Says this is my latest short story collection, paranormal action, alternate history, and fantasy. Let's see what this one's all about. The Third Crown and Other Weird Tales by Paul Leone. All right, there is the cover. Let's check out this blurb, shall we? This collection of short stories by speculative fiction author Paul Leone, The Hungry Dead of Yu Ching and Other Stories, and Kung Fu Antipopes and Other Strange Stories, contains 9 tales of paranormal action, alternate history, period fantasy, and horror. This is quite an eclectic mix, I have to say. Travel from the nightmarish streets of Berlin in a world where the Third Reich survived into the 21st century to ancient China, the empty mountains of Afghanistan at the height of the war against the Taliban, and finally, a quiet twilight in rural England. 298 pages. We got a historical fantasy, science fiction. That's what Amazon says. All right. Next up, from J.D. Sanderson, a sci-fi writer. Do you love The Twilight Zone, The X-Files, Black Mirror, or Star Trek? Around the Dial, 11 sci-fi and mystery stories written in the style of old-time radio dramas. Oh, I know someone who might be interested in this one. Okay, Around the Dark Dial. Science fiction, horror, and mystery short stories by J.D. Sanderson. Take a trip around the dark dial with 11 original and thought-provoking short stories that invoke the wonder and mystery of old-time radio dramas. Forget all that you know about modern sci-fi. In Around the Dark Dial, it's all about the unexpected. Let's see. Has a quote here. Around the Dark Dial is good old-fashioned science fiction full of twists and surprises and a sense of wonder, but leavened with modern sensibilities. There's a lot to recommend here, with stories ranging from the present day to the far future, from the promise of new technology to the dystopic future we all dread. It's from David Wellington, author of The Last Astronaut. Goes on to say, Around the Dark Dial is a collection of 11 science fiction stories in an ode to old-time radio plays. Let's see. Here are some of the stories. Hello There, which is a 100 years ago, the Yellowstone supervolcano exploded, only to be contained by a mysterious field that blocked off the area. Now the field is fading, and a top military team is going in to explore. Caller 4, a late-night radio program, takes phone calls on alien abductions with frightening results. These are all basically like log lines for all these stories here. And it goes on to share some other ones. Let's see if there's any other that I want to read. The Circus Peanut Gallery. A Mumbai scientist fits several animals with communication devices with hilarious results. Yeah. We have 242 pages on this one. Science fiction anthologies, alien invasion, science fiction. Of course, all these books are suggested to me directly by the publishers themselves, whether they are self-published authors, come from an independent label, or from a small press company. Hey, Rainer. Welcome to the show. All right, we got one more book for tonight. This one comes from Doug Breeden. Doug Breeden writes, Michael and Alexander must soon start a journey that will introduce him to the supernatural world of Palm Beach, which some call the Carpathians of North America. Let's see where this one goes. I appreciate you stopping by. You know that. This is One in the Same, Journey from Mortal to Sorcerer by Douglas A. Breeden. High school senior Michael Siverston has never felt very powerful. He's a high school senior with a scraggly beard. He has something called Asperger's, which he researched relentlessly. He knows he says awkward things sometimes, and he needs a helper to get him through school, but he likes people, and people like Michael. One night, he's troubled by a dream in which his old assistant and mentor, Alexander Davidson, exclaims Michael will soon be one and the same. The vivid dream is a bit of a puzzle, so Michael seeks Alexander out. What he learns is nothing short of shocking. Apparently, Michael is a sorcerer, and life is about to get a lot more complicated. He must soon start a journey that will take him from the depths of hell to the heights of heaven. Michael will be introduced to the supernatural world of Palm Beach, which some call the Carpathians of North America. Follow Michael in his journey through many trials and tribulations as he fights to become the powerful sorcerer he was born to be. 222 pages of occult horror, occult fiction. All right. Very nice. And those are the books for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the books for this week. And if you're watching this on the replay, you know what the deal is. Head on over to the community tab, where in post-production, I will put up the poll where you can vote for which one out of those three books you thought had the most text appeal. That's right. In other words, which one out of those three aforementioned titles would you be most likely to pick? And if you guys want to discover more from the independent market, another way you can do that is to head on over to my playlist tab or my shorts tab, and you can open yourself up some mystery packs. Inside each mystery pack, there is a cover card that reveals a book from the independent market that was recognized by the Live Free, Live Rich Network. And inside the description section of each video, there is a link that will bring you to an editorial that was written specifically on that work by yours truly. Now, keeping things moving right along, I would have the next segment that I would like to do is called The Reader's Review. But unfortunately, I do not have any book reviews to discuss. So I want to share with you guys how you can get involved with this segment. So what am I looking for here? What I'm looking for, well, what is the purpose of this segment? The purpose of this segment is to highlight readers specifically. I feel like in the indie scene, it can't just be nothing but a bunch of authors, you know, just kind of saying, buy my book, because at that point, you know, it's not really a culture as much as it's really just sales and marketing, right? We need to actually have some readers here. And I think one way of kind of like kind of encouraging people to read is to kind of do different things and come up with different ways in which those readers can be recognized. And that's just kind of like what I'm trying to do with this segment here. So if you're a reader, okay, and you have taken the time to read any of these indie books, not just, the books that I may have shared or you may have discovered on this show, but just any indie book or self-published author in general, share a review with me. Share a review, and I would be interested to read that live on the air on your behalf. And what I'm looking for here specifically are written reviews, but short form written reviews. So think like a Amazon customer review, a social media post, if you will, or like if you have a Goodreads account. Okay, so this can be you readers out there. But another way is if you are a booktuber, though, I am open to the idea of bringing you onto the show, and you can actually share an experience with a specific indie book in person here on the show, and we can kind of have a discussion. And I think that would be something fun to do and extra to bring to the show. And also at the same time, give attention to, the people who are giving these indie books the time of day. And I think that's important. But also another way that you can get involved with this segment is you authors, specifically you indie authors. If you have people if you have readers that are going out of their way and reading any of your books specifically, and they're taking the time to leave a review, share a link with me. And you want to recognize, any of those readers, you can share a link to any of those reviews with me, and I'll read those reviews on the air. And we can kind of get a shout out for those readers out there and start recognizing those folks who are giving the independent market the time of day. All right. Now let's get into the announcements. But before we do, I want to bring on my guest that's here with me tonight, who is currently seeking funding for a cool creative project that aims to bring together both bookworms and comic book nerds alike. It is my pleasure to welcome B.A. Turner to Monday Night Live.
How's it going, sir?
Hey, dude. How you doing?
Good.
Get this set up here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. You've been busy making the rounds, man. I've seen you on various different types of podcasts and whatnot, trying to spread the word for the campaign. Before we bring up the campaign, I wanted to ask you, though. So, I've seen you around. Maybe not everybody who might be watching this show may be familiar with your work or whatnot. But what I want to know, you have been very active in the indie scene. But what I'm curious to know specifically is how much of an effort has it been on your end to not only like spread the word, but just to get the opportunity to to spread the word? Because I feel like there is this kind of like growing support. It's still starting, it's in its infancy stage, but I do feel like there is kind of like this growing support network among independent creators, like in general, not just like indie authors or anything like that, but just in general. I kind of wanted to see how you feel about that. Because myself, just to say real quick, I haven't been on a bunch of podcasts, so I don't always know like how much effort there is involved to actually make contacts and whatnot.
Yeah, that's been quite the journey. So I spent the last year getting myself established on Twitter, most importantly, just trying to connect with comic book creators and comic book readers since I'm kind of bridging the gap between the two mediums
Mm-hmm.
and becoming kind of a hybrid creator. And so just finding, artists and other creators, that kind of started getting the ball rolling. But what really helped me was releasing art, right? Art from a creator within the community that was known. And that's what really kind of helped it branch out to find other creators and just grow that network. Now, on the novel side of things, that's a lot more difficult. There is, support groups essentially on Twitter, the Iron Age folks. There's a lot
Yep,
of writers that
familiar with
have
that.
that you can connect with on Twitter, but there's not a lot of readers, unfortunately. The only way that people are kind of hitting the readers is if there's a really, really well-known person within the movement that gets them on their channel or, does a shout out. Like someone like Razor Fist or someone that has published a novel or graphic novel. Now, I've had success connecting with those big names on the comic side of things, but it's really difficult to convince comic book readers to read novels. Um, but I am having some success there, so I am happy with that. So now the trick is, how do I find those novel readers?
I was going to say, do you think because what you say there to what do you say, comic book readers to read novels? Do you
Mhm.
think that's more difficult than trying to get people who read literature to pick up a comic book?
I'd say no, only because of the cost, right? Comic books are much easier to print at a lower cost, and they're much cheaper to print. The other thing is, Amazon hasn't really affected or it hasn't had an effect on the indie comic scene. It's very, very um, engrossed in crowdfunding. So there's really passionate indie comic fans that are willing to invest $25 plus shipping in a floppy, even if it's only 30 pages, because they're so hungry for the creative
Mhm.
works that are as good a quality as the work back in the 90s, in the 80s that we're not seeing from the mainstream. Where it's really hard on the novel side is everyone is so reliant on Amazon that if it's not $10 in free shipping, they're like, nah, I'll wait until it's on Amazon. And the one thing that I'm trying to also spread the word on is, for crowdfunding, it really can help authors be able to afford proper cover art, proper editing, etc. Because I think people have seen in the indie space a lot of times people are forced to do shortcuts because it's hard to afford all that stuff. And if Amazon's only giving you a buck or two, after you sell a book, you got to sell a lot of books to be able to have enough cost or money to keep producing high quality work. And I like that in the comic space, those fans, they really want to invest in the creator so that they can keep providing more books. And I think, instead of having the mindset of, well, I'll go buy 3 or 4 books for $20, $30 on Amazon, and I'll never know if the author's going to create another book if they're a debut author. you know, if you crowdfund or you support someone that's crowdfunding, not only are you helping them provide, again, more detailed art or have a professional editor, you're helping small businesses across the board, right? My campaign, for example, there's 4 artists that are all independent creators. It's
That's
their
awesome, man.
passion. Yeah, thank you. And the printer is a small business. Everyone that's touching the project is a small business, and I
What?
like that.
Yeah, and I see. I want to get into it, but first, before I do have something that I want to say on that, but I think that now is a good time. Maybe we should get and introduce the campaign.
Sounds
So
good.
what are we talking about tonight? We're talking about B.A. Turner's Vigilantes Creed, and you advertise it as 2 novels and a mini comic, and this is now funding on 2 sites. So we got Indiegogo, and simultaneously we have also featured on fundmycomic.com, which is a fairly new website that is kind of sprung up in the recent years and is kind of niche for indie comic book creators as kind of a space for those creators, I should say. Let me just say hi to Sean real quick. Welcome. What's going on, man? So let's bring up the campaign here. All right, I suppose it'd be good to start with the trailer.
Sounds good.
So we'll go ahead, we'll play that. Awesome. All right. Who's responsible for making that?
So that's Von Klaus, who's the creator of Monster MD and Terror in the Trenches. Some really, really awesome indie comics.
Terror in the Trenches. Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like you're doing a great job so far, getting the word out. You're already over 50% funded, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
good.
there.
And you still have 43 days left. 34 backers. You have quite a few perks on here. Yeah. So I'm not going to go through all the perks, but this is the part where I wanted to say something in regard to earlier, where you were talking about, kind of almost bridging that gap, if you will, between the literary world and the comic books. And so you're saying, so is advertising as 2 novels plus the mini comic. So what I wanted to say about it was, like, myself, I'll say I've never really been like a comic book guy, right? So for me, I'm more into like literature and reading novels and stuff like that. So for me, that was kind of like one of the big sells for me to get involved in this. Get involved in this campaign. So for me, like, but I will say that within like the past like couple years or so, like I have caught wind of like the comic book community through various like YouTube channels. And I will say that I am learning a lot. So when you talk about like getting all these artists involved, there is a certain degree of appreciation and respect that I have that goes into that craft, even though I am not very knowledgeable of it. But I am willing to, I do have an open mind, and I've been learning a lot, like I said, and I am quite astonished at like just the amount of work that goes into just producing a single comic book. So
absolutely.
So what I wanted to show here is like where you're kind of bridging that gap is like where you're offering, you say both novels. So right here where it says both novels and a mini comic, that's a $40 perk on that one. So does this mean that people are going to be getting 2 physical novels and a physical copy of the mini comic.
Correct. And there's 2 mini comics, or actually 3 versions that you get to choose from there. There's the
Oh, cool.
main cover version there that's depicted in the middle. Then there's the painted version, and then the black and white version as well.
All right. That's awesome, man.
Yep.
That's awesome. Is there anything in particular that you want to say? Because you do have, like I say, don't want to go through all the perks because I want to
Yep.
give people a chance to kind of take their time and really
Mhm.
like dig into this and just
Yep.
see all the different options that you're making available to people, regardless of how much they want to contribute.
Mhm.
Is there anything in particular that you want to say about the perks or maybe some extended goals or anything like that?
Sure, yeah. So, with there being technically 5 physical items, between the 2 novels, the 3 mini comic options, that's why, there's a lot of perks. And it can seem a little overwhelming, but how you can approach this is any possible combination that you might want is there as a bundle or as an individual item. I wanted to make sure that everyone had every option possible so that they're not feeling like they're forced to get one package or the other. The other thing I wanted to hit on is, the purpose of the mini comic. So it's supplemental to the novels in the sense that it introduces every single major and supporting character with key scenes from the book. So you're going to have these scenes in comic style format with panels, two-page spreads, etc. But it's going to give you those key characteristics about the character, their height, their weight, where they're from, their abilities, anything that's pertinent or important about the character will be on those pages introducing those characters. So it's not a traditional character, it's more to enhance the reading experience. I think a lot of people can relate that, when they're reading a novel, obviously you got to put it down from time to time when you have, 200 plus pages. And sometimes when you pick it back up, you're trying to remember, well, how did the creator, describe this character's hair color or facial features or abilities, right? Well,
Right.
now you have that mini comic that you can just look right at that character's page and be like, ah, and then it's popped in, it's ingrained in your mind so that while you're reading, you can visualize it like you're watching a film or reading a graphic novel. You're not being distracted by trying to remember things, and it'll make it a much more immersive reading experience.
Adding
Because
that visual aspect, if you
exactly.
will, little companion,
Hmm.
a little companion piece, if you will,
Yep.
to the novels itself.
Exactly.
I
Yep.
get you. Yeah, I get you. Let's talk about this story a little bit. I want to
Hmm.
get into a little bit about the story. Well, first, let's see. Okay, so that's going into all the items there. Here's a little bit about the artwork. You want to give a shout out to your artists real quick on this? Everyone that was involved on this one.
Yeah, for sure. So for all the colored covers and majority of the interior art, it's Corey Barton, a fantastic artist out of Australia. You can look him up on Twitter under his name.
Is this one
At,
his?
yep, yep.
I think that's the
And
one I got.
then Skunk Artworks, who's a painter out of Germany. He did the variant cover, who's
I've heard of
fantastic.
skunks. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that black and white cover there is by Joe Ball, who's just an insane just detailed artist and especially black and white art. He has a campaign called Death, Death, Death that is a 300 page graphic novel. I mean, just insane. And
Holy shit.
it's like less than $50. I mean, it's very affordable. So yeah, I had him put that together for the black and white piece. And yeah, and then Elliot Rodriguez, who's an up and coming artist out of Peru. He did a couple interior pages and he did one of the art prints that will come free with any of the bundled physical packages.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And
Cool.
I forgot to mention there's also digital packages as well for folks that, may want to save a little bit of money, not worry about shipping costs, so you can get both novels in total for $25. And if you want the comics as well, it's $35 for all 5 items together. So
Yeah, I think it's a good deal. You know, getting in on it. I mean, you're starting to support someone who's an up and comer in the indie scene. Well, you're not one of your at least one of your were both of your novels out before you started this? Like, did you have them
just the
published
first
somewhere
one.
else?
Just the first one was on Amazon
Yeah.
briefly.
So I could have sworn I've seen
Yep.
it before. The first one, you had a
Yep.
different cover at the time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So basically, the comic book itself is kind of like when I say, well, when you say kind of like a companion piece. Now, as far as the timeline goes, like where's
Oh
the
yeah.
novels versus like this mini comic?
Yeah, that's one of the great things about this campaign is the 2 novels are 100% complete. I already have proofs, as you can see here in hand, so we don't have to worry about that. The mini comic will be completed before the end of the campaign, so before October, which means in October I'll be able to ship everything to everybody.
Oh
And
wow!
in crowdfunding, it ranges, right? Some people, will ship within 70 to 90 days. Other people, they may get the funding and then finish the book. So it could be 6 months, a year, or more. So I'm doing the more aggressive approach where I'm investing upfront myself, and then everyone's funding it's basically a pre-order so that I can afford to print all the books and ship them immediately. So everyone should have everything in October. So just 2 months from now.
Business wise, I think that's smart because I feel like it kind of like gets you established with like a core audience. I mean, that's
Hmm.
my take on it.
Hmm.
What happens, I guess, time will tell, but that's kind of my take on it because it's like, people are, while the campaign is still fresh in their
Yep.
mind, you know what I mean? And it's like, and they're hyped for it. And it's like, and they don't have to wait long before they have a finished product in their hand. And this is looking great, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and I
Let's
was I was
no,
hoping
go ahead.
too it'd build a little trust with the community, right? They'll know that they're gonna get their product quick, and that I'm putting in as much effort and capital as possible so that I can give them the best product possible, and I'm not taking any shortcuts. These books are professionally edited. Obviously, the art is professionally done by some top tier indie artists, so you're getting the best product I could provide.
Let's talk about this. So you've already have like some established lore and the story so far. Now, is this something that you're going to plan on? I mean, maybe it's too early to tell. If it's a spoiler, you don't have to share. But I mean, is this something that you kind of like plan on expanding or doing spin-off type things, or is this it?
No, so on the novel side of things, I plan on writing book 3, which is an indirect spin-off with a character that gets introduced at the end of book 2. Um, and then
Of the
from
novel?
the third novel, and then on the comic side of things, I'm hoping to start doing full comic issues. So ideally, my next campaign, whether it's in a year or whatnot, I'd like to have book 3 plus issue number 1 of a full, like 30 plus page comic, and then just keep going with that trend and build this story. Because I don't, I'm not the type of creator that really wants to at the moment branch out and create other stories. Like I'm obsessed with this storyline. Like it's my passion project. So I want to build on it and make the most out of it.
For sure. Let's talk about this story for a minute.
Yeah.
I just kind of get like an overview here. So the story as it is right now, a gargoyle story unlike any other. A hero we don't deserve but desperately need. History would lead us to believe that the citizens of Detroit should turn to the police to save them, when in reality they should be looking to the sky. When a distraught Slade Allen saves the life of Rachel Winston in exchange for his own, he doesn't expect to wake up metaphysically bound to a divine grimoire, or to have the power of one of the world's most feared supernatural creatures waiting to be unleashed. Human by day, gargoyle by night, Slade pulls at the strings of Detroit's corruption, slowly unraveling a Nazi era secret. Such a discovery spurs the formation of a team of vigilantes determined to crush the megalomaniac behind the city's undoing. Under the alias Dread Knight, Slade and his team battle augmented mercenaries, a corrupt police force, and media deception in order to save the city before it's too late. Filled with supernatural and biblical lore, Vigilantes Creed provides a high octane yet emotional story of vengeance and redemption. So this is what I wanted to address right here.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing that I noticed with the story, like right away, was kind of like this juxtaposition that you've laid out here as well, between like the scientific and like the mystical.
Mm-hmm.
There's this, where does it say, the with this character here, the head honcho guy here, he says the antagonist, Incubus, uses his synapsis serum along with a procedure called cerebral incursion to enter the subconscious of his subjects, allowing him to mold their minds as he sees fit. That's pretty deep for a comic book character, I have to say. Well, technically, this is he's in the novels, right?
Yeah, so the comic book doesn't actually tell the story. All the story is in the novel. The comic book is 100% supplemental, visual information or visual depictions, as well as, it's kind of like having comic book pages with trading card information on them, where it's
Okay.
like telling you where the locations are, what this character is, what they do.
Well, that explains a lot,
Yeah,
because I was going to say this seems like some pretty deep stuff
yeah,
for for a comic book. Well, at least for an
absolutely.
introductory comic book to the series,
Hmm.
which the comic book, as we said, is not introductory. It's
Hmm.
more of a supplemental to already established story.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to definitely to digging into those novels, because, well, for one, so the neuroscience galore, so mind control serums. So this is where I was saying is kind of like, so you have the gargoyles, right? So you have
Yep.
the mystical. That juxtaposition is very fascinating to me between like the scientific and the mystical aspect. I definitely see, because so you have the mind control serums, right? But then
Hmm.
you have the gargoyles, and what that, in the Gothic sense of the word, and what that actually symbolizes.
Hmm.
Like, I can definitely see a lot of potential, like for some fun situations and some clever setups,
Yep.
as far as how those two concepts can kind of clash there.
Absolutely.
And is that and you say that there's these kind of like biblical themes too, which is what led me to believe that, the when you're talking about gargoyles, you mean it in like more of like the Gothic sense of the
Hmm.
word.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, essentially, a lot of people have the misconception that it's like the Gargoyles TV series, which was a medieval backstory and more magic based, where mine, it basically took the idea or the belief
Oh yeah, I remember
of,
that. I remember
yep.
that show. See,
Hmm.
that didn't even, cross my mind.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, that I remember that.
So yeah, it's kind of growing on the old belief of, in the Catholic Church, that they put gargoyles or grotesques on top of cathedrals to
Yeah, yeah.
keep out evil spirits. It was such a fearful looking creature, it could even instill fear into evil. And so I took that idea and basically just grew with it, right? And so I tied in kind of the biblical sense of things with archangels and whatnot, and then again, the main focus is you have a character that looks like a demon. He looks evil, but he's actually a pure hero, and he's just using his abilities, his appearance, his fearfulness to instill fear in the most evil of men.
Yeah, and the way that the science portion of it has to do with like the mind specifically. Yeah, I could
That's
definitely. I'm picking up what you're putting down is what I'm saying there. You know, the psyche and all that stuff. Yeah, for sure. I dig it, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's see what else we got here. There was something else that I wanted to let's see. Hello to Horror's Blood Moon in the chat too, by the way. What's going on, man?
What's going?
I'm talking about B.A. Turner's project here. So the villains. Yeah, we were talking about one of the villains. So this is the one. This was another thing. So this has to do with like what was it? That's what it was. Like the H.P. Lovecraft thing. So the H.P. Lovecraft a little bit. And that's what it seemed like. I'm not saying that's what it is, but I'm saying that's what it seemed like when you see this. Was H.P. Lovecraft an inspiration at all for you? Have you read any of his material?
I have. It was a slight inspiration, but ironically, this character the design was not inspired by Cthulhu by any means. So his name is Incubus, and he's actually supposed to look like a octopus. And when you think octopus, right, ink, and he has also a mechanical arm, which allows him to like constrict people, right? Choke them. So again, kind of relating to an octopus. And when he does that cerebral incursion and enters their subconscious, those tentacles can move. He's got ink coming out of his mouth, right? He can bend bars. Like he can make any subject see or feel anything he wants if he does enough of those procedures on them. So that's where it's more Lovecraftian, is that eeriness, that horror of when he's entering their minds and the things that you witness in there, and that the things that are revealed about Incubus when he's in their minds. So it's urban fantasy, but it's also sci-fi. It's kind of a healthy mixture, which
That
is what
is
I
one of the
loved about it.
themes of that is kind of like a Lovecraftian theme as well, though, that that going insane, a lot of the protagonists or whatnot in a lot of Lovecraftian fiction, the psychological, it's very much a psychological aspect to it. It's not just, a monster of the week kind of thing.
Exactly.
So Incubus, let's learn about this character, shall we? It says, a villain you love to hate, a villain beyond reprehensible. Nothing is off limits when it comes to obtaining money and power for Incubus. After unearthing a mind control serum created by none other than Adolf Hitler. Literally Hitler? I'm kidding. I actually already was aware of that before all this started. Why do you think I backed the campaign? I heard Nazis were involved, and I was like, say no more.
Yep.
Take my money.
Yeah, there's some historical intrigue as well. So that was fun as well.
I just wanted to bring that up, which actually brings us to our next order of business before we say our goodbyes. I have a very special question that I've been meaning to ask you specifically for quite some time. So I figure what better time than live on the air. All I really need you to do is just either confirm or deny. But if you feel so inclined, then please, by all means, feel free to elaborate if you think need be. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Turner, before you decided to go ahead and give Vigilante's Creed the green light, so to speak, did you or did you not inquire the services of a professional sensitivity reader?
Yeah, obviously I'm laughing because hell no.
Really? Really? But aren't you afraid of being labeled problematic?
No, and I've actually done an extensive YouTube video on this topic, and I got blocked by some folks on this on Twitter by voicing my opinion. But
Are you
no,
serious?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if people want to hire them, that's fine. I just don't believe in promoting that. Um, you know, people have enough common sense to know what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and my book is tailored off of you know what grew in my mind, not what others may want to expect or what a small group of people might want my book to be. That's why I self-published, right? When I was naive in a sense and thought that self or mainstream publishing was still a possibility. Like maybe there's a literary agent or a publishing house that is still traditional per se. And after I did those submissions, and seeing their wish lists, I just realized. And when I got like I did get full manuscript requests, and they're just like, you got to remove that. It's too much like a damsel in distress. You can't have him saving that woman. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not removing that, or you need to change this about your character, or that's too dark, or like I'm like, no, I'm not gonna let someone else change
Hey,
my story.
that's that, and that's the beauty of being indie, man, and being
Exactly.
self-published is not you don't answer to no one. There's no gatekeepers. There's no
Hmm.
nonsense. No bullshit.
Yep.
There you have it, folks. B.A. Turner, Vigilantes Creed. Before we say our goodbyes, is there another like? Is there a specific indie book or indie author and or content creator that you would like to give a shout out to, sir?
Yeah, so I would first off recommend Joe Ball's Death, 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 which is on Indiegogo that I mentioned earlier. It's a very symbolic and intense graphic novel, and it's, like I said, 300 pages at a very low price. And if you like biblical lore and the spiritual side of things, that's what that book is about. So I highly recommend that. On the novel side, I'd recommend picking up a copy of M.R. Hike's Sunset Everlasting, who's a really good indie novelist and a friend of mine. It's a very good Southern book that has a lot of symbolism and references to Southern culture, him being from Alabama, and it's also very philosophical and has fantasy elements. So
Oh,
I'd
cool.
highly recommend checking that out on Amazon. And
Okay.
then, of course, your show. Keep watching your show. It's awesome what you're doing. We need more people, spreading the love and the word about indie creators and the
I'm
creativity
trying.
that's
I'm
out
just
there.
having fun with it.
Yeah.
Showing up, try and do my part. But I
Yep.
just like for me being a part of the scene in general, man. It's a blast. I'm having fun with
Hmm.
it. Like you just never know what you're going to discover. I think that that's probably the biggest draw for
Hmm.
me is like just getting your hands dirty, just getting in there, and just it's very interactive too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So thanks for sharing your time with me
Yeah.
and coming on. It's a pleasure to finally make your acquaintance, and
Likewise.
uh, and maybe I have you on again sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me, and it was nice to see all y'all in the chat.
All right, man. Take care and good
All
luck
right.
to you.
Take care.
All right. What's Horace up to tonight? How you doing, Mr. Blood Moon? Oh yeah, for those of you who are here live right now, of course, in the post production, I will be putting all the links down in the show notes for you guys. BA's contact and the campaign, all that. That BA, he's a good sport, man. I have to say, putting up with my foolishness. That was fun. All right, if you guys have you want to get your work on the show, the easiest way to go about doing that is down in the show notes down below. You can join either the Gilded or the Discord server. Those links are always, like I say, in the show notes down below. It's an open invitation. Everyone is welcome, okay? And you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to be a published author or anything like that. Like if you just want to support the independent scene, you know, whether you are a reader, regardless if that's literature or comic books, all are welcome. Okay, you're all welcome. And I just assume everybody's an adult. You guys can talk amongst yourselves, network amongst yourselves all you want. There's literally no expectations on my end. Like I don't expect you to check in daily. I don't expect you to share your personal life or anything like that. If you literally just want to use these network servers as a resource for your own work to kind of keep me on the up and up with what you guys are working on, please, by all means, that's what it's there for. Because for me, I like to plan these shows out ahead of time for you guys so I can kind of deliver like a quality kind of program, if you will. You know, where people can meet up and once a week, whatever you guys want to have something to watch during the week, you know, put it on the background, something to listen to, what have you. Stay, you know, as far as terms of discovery, another method of discovery, because it's the same for me too. Like I follow a bunch of different YouTube channels, different book reviewers on Goodreads and whatnot, and these are all different methods of discovery for me, because that's really what a big part of indie scene culture is, word of mouth. And just, you know, it's very community based type of activity here. Oh, you're working on book 2 of your series. All right. The sci-fi intergalactic superhighway. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Just send me the word. Just say the word, man. Say the word and we'll make it happen. Let's talk about some opportunities for you writers out there, for you aspiring authors or you published authors. The Storytellers Society is still accepting open submissions. Here's a little presentation for you guys. The Storytellers Society still accepting open submissions. This is a public collaborative project, kind of basically an outreach program, really, for my peers in the writing community. What I'm looking for is flash fiction for this project. Flash fiction for this project is fiction that is between 500 all the way up to 2,000 words. This can be fiction that you actually have published somewhere else, so long as you own the copyright and you have the right to give me permission to republish it on my blog, where it will be free for public viewing from now and indefinitely. Just because you submit something doesn't mean that your work will automatically be published. It does need to be approved, but if approved, then you'll effectively book yourself a room at what I've dubbed the Hotel del SS, where all the members of the Storytellers Society stay. Yes, yes. So you can check that out. You can head on over to my website at www.livefreeliverich.com. While you're over there, right on the homepage, you can subscribe to LFLR Weekly, which is my weekly newsletter that I send out exactly one newsletter every week on Saturdays. And you will get that email, and we'll give you all the links, the relevant links that have for everything that happened across the entire brand within the past week, the previous week. Easy enough. Last but not least, if you guys have some news to share, you can share it with me. And I'm more than happy to share that news on your behalf during a future live stream. Whether you guys want to come on and share that news yourself, or you just want to share a link with me, whether it be to like a little short blog post, a little social media link, or anything like that. You just want to give me some news. Like say if you're running like, I don't know, like a special freebie giveaway or something like that. Another thing is, another big one, I should say, is like if you run like book clubs or you're doing buddy reads, that's another announcement that you could share, because that might be something that I would be interested in, at least at some point down the road when I have more time for those sorts of things. But I myself, I am very interested in actually reading what's coming out of the independent market. And talking about those things, and that can be fun. I think that is actually running a book club. I wish I had the time to organize and set up like a really fun, engaging book club, but that is a whole nother can of worms, which, like, more power to you if you're somebody out there. I think that there's definitely a need, I think, in my opinion, that there is definitely a need for somebody to kind of take the bull by the horns and really start a serious indie book club. And I have talked about one individual before, from Katie Room from Periapsis Press. As far as I know, she is one of the only people that I've encountered so far that have is trying to do that. Start a book club, but not just start a book club, but start a book club that specifically focuses on independently published literature. So I think that's cool, and I definitely think that there's a need for that. And I think I think that a lot of people will see, as this indie scene, as more and more people go indie, it's going to be inevitable that there's going to be kind of a demand, or there's going to be people who are going to want to, like readers, I'm talking about, aka customers as well, supporters of the indie scene, that are going to want these types of groups that they can turn to and interact with other people, the more sociable types of people, the people who aren't, necessarily the loners or, the introverts, but the more extroverted people are going to want these social atmospheres. And I think that building these support networks and creating these kind of social affairs, if you will, is going to be more and more significant as time goes on. Chris Farley voice. All right. How about a little motivation, huh? Let's hop into some reading time. What do I got lined up for reading time? This comes from the Discord server. I know that much. Hey, Rumble. I got some Rumble chat. Cramble, AM Kreble, SST, says we live in a society. Hello from Canada. Shout out to Canada. How you doing over there? You got the maple leaf in the house. All right, what am I reading for you guys tonight? This is Get Up Off of That Thing, an essay by Jacob Kalta. This comes via his astounding.substack.com, so his blog. All right, let's get right into it. Before you are 6 of the most prolific human beings to ever walk the face of the earth in the past 100 or so years. From left to right, on the top are musicians Michael Jackson, Prince, and James Brown. From left to right, on the bottom are filmmaker Jesus Franco, writer Walter B. Gibson, and writer Harlan Ellison. These 6 are inspirations to me. Michael Jackson was a multimedia tour de force, combining genre-bending pop with inventive choreography and continually pushing the medium of the music video forward with each album he produced. Someone who managed to, in many ways, marry his own love of higher culture with his love of popular art. Thusly, he was crowned by the public as the king of pop. If MJ was the king, Prince was, as the great Stevie Wonder once put it, the emperor. Oh, he's not the prince. A multi-instrumentalist demigod who not only crafted a decades-long library of funk-infused records, but also wrote more songs for others and made more bands within his own musical scene. In the end, he had truly forged his own sonic empire, one that changed the fabric of modern American music forever. James Brown is where the boys both learned it from. A wild-eyed dancer, a tight band leader, and gifted singer/songwriter who once clocked 5 albums in a year and managed to still give it his all right until the end, breathing life into the funk genre, just as American rock began to go beyond its rhythm and blues roots. The bluesiest man in show business, the godfather of soul, and a juggernaut of the rock and roll era. Jesus Franco was a machine, a Spanish filmmaker who thrived in low budgets and on continental Europe, creating exploitation films such as Frequency. He could have his name on 10 pictures within a year. While no one bats 1,000, Franco developed a lyrical style of surrealism that blurred the lines between lurid genre fiction and inspired experimentation, making his films more than just exploitation films, but never quite enough for the hoity-toity art house sect. Walter B. Gibson was the machine to end all machines, the man who took The Shadow from a nondescript radio framing device to a darksome specter of justice who never failed to prove that crime has not and never will pay. The man who managed to take on the awesome task of The Shadow magazine's twice-a-month publication schedule, and more often than not, delivered the goods with few guest writers brandishing the pen of street smiths Maxwell Grant. To better clarify, the man wrote 2 novels a month. Holy shit. At age 80, Walter B. Gibson complained he could, quote, only write 5 books a year in the 30s/40s, or 5 books a year at 80. In the 30s/40s, he wrote 24 shadow novels a year and most of the shadow comics, earning enough to afford a 2-story, 5-room apartment in Manhattan at the height of the Depression. Step your game up. Like how it says Corona typewriter right there. In the same vein as where the Depression is talked about. And then there is dear old Harlan Ellison. Hundreds of stories, essays, scripts, and more to his name. Ellison was a defining voice in new wave speculative fiction, and the only thing more overpowering than his sheer volume of work was the steadfast, singular voice behind each page. A forthright, bold writer who drew on a fount of unending knowledge and brought forth a style of prose and a magnetic brand of storytelling that could only come from the mind of one Harlan Ellison. I cite these 6 as being terrific inspirations for me because for all you can talk about their God-given talents, any and all luck that befell them, or other such matters of circumstances, I look up to these men because they worked. They busted their asses off, went to the grindstone, and came up sharp as an axe, ready to swing down on every problem that came their way. Jackson would lose pounds of sweat over the course of a concert. Prince never stopped recording music, making dozens and dozens of tracks that would never see the light of day. These were people who fought long and hard to have their vision seen through. This point goes out especially to Ellison, whose honesty, while wielding like a blunt force weapon, was backed by a conviction you could sense in every word he spoke. In the case of Jackson, he had to stump for his 1983 single Billie Jean to be included on the landmark pop record Thriller, and in the end came away with perhaps the grandest jewel in his crown. They were all indeed gifted in some way or another, but those gifts meant nothing without the motivation and drive to see them used in the name of realizing your work. And these 6 had it in spades. My reason for relaying this to you is because to those wishing to see their culture changed for the better, be they left, right, center, or pear-shaped, I keep seeing the pundits and talking heads doing nothing but bitching and moaning about shit. This is perhaps more an indictment of right-leaning parties, but I swear to God, I keep seeing this nonsense. Michael Knowles whining about Prince's music not being good, or yesterday Scott Greer was bitching about Luc Besson's The Fifth Element and deciding to write the man's entire career off. I won't even dignify them with titles of employ because, quite frankly, I don't care what hole they crawled out of. I have no more patience for people with all problems and no solutions. I'm sick of them making fusses over Cubist art and why we can't return to classical forms. I already ranted and raved about all this horseshit here. The conservative impulse to shoot oneself in the foot. How I learned to stop worrying and just get on with it. You can read the full story. I probably shouldn't even be writing this article because I got too much shit to get done. I've got 365 Infantry number 5 due out in 2 weeks. I'm busy helping get Anvil number 1 pieced together for all those wonderful folks out there in Iron Age land. I got music to write and movies to review. But that's the point. While these kvetches keep yammering on and on about why does the culture suck? Why does the culture suck? I'm out there making it happen. I'm out there moving and shaking like a Saturday night. I tell tales of grand adventure and heavy metal hair raising. I write music that captures the mind. And when the time comes, I'll be back in the saddle, reviewing the arts on YouTube, Dailymotion, Rumble, and BitChute. And maybe Odyssey, if I can get some synchronicity going. But I come to you all with a simple plea. If you want me on my knees for it, I'll get down on both and bow like Alice Cooper's in The Room. Don't let these guys run the show. Fuck them, and fuck you for letting them. Oh, shit, you get the gloves coming off now. Let me run that back real quick. Don't let these guys run the show. Fuck them, and fuck you for letting them. This is why nothing ever gets done. You all have to constantly keep justifying yourselves as if there's any conversation left to be had. The choices have been made. The beliefs of those in power are cast in iron, and their only true tenet is their self-interests. What's good for them, not you. Yeah, I mean, I'm. It's fun. It's so serendipitous that I'm reading this essay right now because I'm definitely going to be addressing special interest groups in the following segment. So it's quite interesting that you're bringing this up. But I do definitely get where you're coming from as far as, the pundits, if you will, that kind of like create they perpetually create the rage bait, the clickbait type, what I call the disposable content. It's just news cycle bullshit. It's like these are the people, as much as they bitch, moan, and complain about Hollywood, that's precisely where they are spending a vast majority of their attention, is still invested in what is going on in Hollywood, what's going on with the mainstream, what's going on with the woke, whatever is hot in the next hot button thing that's going on in the arts and the entertainment industry, and just to create disposable content. And it just seems like, well, you're doing it for the algorithm. Oh, you got to do it to do it for the algorithm so you can get clicks and stuff like that. And it's like, dude, like at the end of the day, like when do you hold yourself accountable? Like I relate with your sentiment here, Jacob. Like when does the content creator hold themselves accountable for the content that they are producing? Like I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't create content to satisfy a fucking algorithm. First and foremost, the algorithm is not a sentient fucking being. You speak of the algorithm as if it is your god, as if it is a sentient being that you need to impress, like you need to appease this being called the algorithm, whatever the hell that means. And if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. that does fuck all. I don't give a shit about what the algorithm wants. I'm going to create what I want, what I think is cool. I want to pay it. Whatever I'm paying attention to is cool, period, from my perspective. Okay. So whatever it is that I'm choosing to pay attention to, whatever it is that I'm choosing to create content about, is the stuff that that I want to talk about for my own personal reasons, that I don't have to get into right here. But I'm making, in other words, just let it be known that I'm making a conscious decision every time I create content. I am making a conscious decision of what it is that I'm going to put onto the internet. In other words, I'm not doing it. If I'm doing it for anyone else, you can bet your ass I am not doing it to please some non-sentient fucking being called the algorithm. That is literally like, tell me you are someone who is easily manipulated without telling me you are somebody who is easily manipulated. Oh, you got to do this because it pleases the algorithm, you guys. Yeah, AI. And people wonder why some people are afraid of AI, because it's people like you out there that the AI will be fucking playing like puppets, like marionettes, like a marionette. Horace likes your writing here, Jacob. It's like, a funny point on that, and it's like, because you're here, and I am glad that you're here. I don't expect people to always tune in live. A lot of people like to catch this on the replay, and that's fine. It's a two-way street, right? Like, you guys tune in when you want to, watch the show when you want to. I understand everybody can have lead their own lives, and people can be busy and yada, yada, yada. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, who am I creating content for? You know what I mean? That's what I try to keep on the back of my mind every time I upload something online, whether I'm sharing my own work or I'm talking about what's going on in the scene. And that's what I want this, show to be. And it's like, the only way to do that is like, how am I paying attention? What am I paying attention to? And what am I spending my time on? Because whatever you're paying attention to and spending your time on is, in the grand scheme of things, what you as an individual are appreciating in this world. So I feel like, if people collectively, and I put that in quotes now, because I'm definitely not into that groupthink bullshit. I very much believe in individualism. Everyone has free will, free to make their own choices in this world. But if you got to think about it, what is a collective but a group of individuals? That's all a collective is. And I feel like you, at some point in time, as a consumer, you have to take responsibility for the things that you are consuming, the things that you are choosing to pay attention to. So with Jacob here, I just want to say to you that I definitely dig your sentiment here, and I understand your grief as far as where you're getting into with this essay so far. And it sounds like you are aware of the pundits, but then I would like to ask you, how are you, if I could, you could leave a comment if you see this, whatever, but I would want to know, like, how some of your habits, because I know that you're very busy with it sounds like you're spinning, you got a lot of plates spinning as well. You spin a lot, your type of individual spin a lot of plates. But, as far as when you do have time to consume, like, what are you doing? Are you reading, indie books? Are you reviewing indie books? It sounds like you review films as well. You get into like indie film. You got anything like that you talk about? Are you putting? Is that what you're going to be doing with your channel? As far as like you're going to be doing like indie review type content, stuff like that? Because if so, I think that's definitely the type of stuff that I would be interested in paying attention to, because it's an active role in this. Like, people think change is just something that just happens and then you just go with the flow. Like, it takes a certain type of individual to realize that you have to be the change that you want to see. And I know that's kind of a cliche to say, especially in this day and age, with online memes and whatnot, but it's true. It is true in the pragmatic sense. If we want to look at it from an objective standpoint, objectively, if you're spending the majority of your time watching rage bait, clickbait content, drama tea time content online that revolves around mainstream, lamestream, hot button, BuzzFeed, news cycle bullshit, wow, be prepared to get more of whatever it is that you yourself as an individual are making the conscious decision to appreciate, even if you are hate watching or hate consuming, whatever that is, whatever that means at the end of the day. Like, what does that really? Oh, I'm hate watching this. Oh yeah, you're really going to show Hollywood who's boss when you go and watch that movie that you hate so much for the third time. You go buy tickets for that for the third time in theaters, and then you buy the DVD so you can go through all the bonus extras and poke fun and make jokes about it. You're really going to show Hollywood when you open up your wallet and support all the projects that you think are woke or annoying or you hate or whatever. At some point you got to connect the dots, is what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions upon those of you specifically who may be watching this, because obviously if you're here, you already understand where a lot of my sentiments lie, and you probably relate with at least some of them to some degree. I know I can get a little bit extreme at times, perhaps a little bit edgy, if you will, but I digress. D.A. Bell, welcome to the show, man. Good to see your name. Let's finish this up here. So Jacob goes on to say in his essay, this is an era of action, getting down, getting dirty, getting into the weeds. If you don't like something, quote, see something and say something, end quote, don't cut it anymore. If you don't like something, see something and say something, don't cut it anymore, Jack. You hate the movies on the marquee, go watch the works of John Ford, Orson Welles, or Howard Hawks. You hate the music on the radio? Honey, we got millennia's worth at home. Classical, jazz, funk, rock, blues, country, folk, you name it, it's yours. Can't find anything good to read on the B&N shelves? Try Bradbury, Huxley, Fleming, or good old Bill Shakespeare himself. None of that float your boat? Pick up a guitar or an electric keyboard. Grab a camera, brandish a pen, and stab at the heart of the world you find swamped with mediocrity and hate, and draw the one you want to live in. There is no one to stop you, and everything there to help you send that vision of yours into the world. Amen to that. There's a brilliant line from Mr. Ellison I'm quoting in my 365 show Bible. my handy pitch for a proper animated program or any potential AV production. It's an extremely truncated version of a beautiful screed, but it gets to the point all the same. Quote, the meek shall inherit nothing but debasement, frustration, and ignoble deaths. Put yourself dead on the line every time. Those 6 men I call heroes, idols even, were not perfect. Not in the ways you are thinking either. We're not talking about cruel allegations, ill tempers, or omnipresent addictions. I mean, they were human, flesh and blood, and it is that humanity that gave them the soul and wit needed to create masterpieces. Maybe not on the caliber of Rembrandt or Shakespeare or Bach, but masterpieces nonetheless. Those 6 changed the world through stories they told and the music they made. They did it through conviction, commitment, and bulldog determination. They did it for themselves and contributed to the world through their art and their belief in it. What the hell are you doing for your culture? Some bold words and bold statements from Jacob Calta. Thanks for sharing that, sir. That was a pleasure to read. You got me all fired up, got me ready for some hot topic. I dig it. Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with that. You know, so good point. D.A. Bell just says, good point. That's why I watch, read, and listen to what I want. You know, but I would almost take that a little bit further and say, are you conscious of the things? And I don't mean that in an an insulting kind of way. I mean it more in like a literal sense. Like do you ever like stop and think like is it a conscious decision, or is it just like, oh, this is just something that caught my eye and I'm just going to check it out type of thing? Or do you like go digging and go searching for, you know, the things that interest you? You know, that's what I would be interested to know. If you guys have something that you'd like me to check out, you can contribute to Reading Time. It can be essays, it can be flash fiction, it can be poetry, it can also be critical reviews and like in editorial format, you know, long form kind of editorial format. And I'll read that live on the air. And I just want to let you guys know that anytime, if I have ever featured any of your work on any of these shows, I keep all these episodes up on the YouTube channel. You are welcome to download any of these episodes. You can edit them. You can cut them, clip them up, edit them however you want, and use them for your own advertising and marketing purposes. I'm totally cool with that. And if you want to, you know, drop my name or link my website, then that would be greatly appreciated. You know, a large part of this, I do it for you guys, man. I have fun while doing it. Best believe it's about, you know, whether or not I'm having fun doing it first and foremost. But I'm doing this for you guys. I'm doing this for the interaction. I'm doing it for the engagement. You know, as we kind of actively spend our time and attention as we kind of raise awareness for various projects from around the underground scene. Now, before I get into Hot Topic tonight, I do have some featured media to check out. So we'll do that beforehand here. See what I have for some featured media. We got some anime fans. Do we have some anime fans? I am not. I would not. I do not label myself a fan of anime. There were probably some select adult anime back in the day, like or I should say for mature audiences, like, you know, like Fist of the, I'm not talking hentai. I'm talking like Fist of the North Star, you know, that type of like graphically violent type of anime that I kind of got a kick out of. But for the most part, I'm really not a cartoon kind of guy. I haven't really been into cartoons for quite some time. But we're going to see here what's going on. This is entitled Converting My Channel into an Anime Review Channel. So for those of you who are interested, this comes courtesy of Chad Decodu from he's a member on the Discord, and this is on via his YouTube channel. All right, let's get right into it.
So I grew up in the 80s, and I used to watch Transformers. I had a couple Transformers. It took me until the 2007 Shia LaBeouf, Michael Bay movie to know that the Transformers were originally from Japan. Like, there's a joke in that movie about, oh, they're advanced robots, they must be from Japan.
It's a robot. It's like
some Megan Fox action there.
Advanced robot. It's probably Japanese. Yeah, it's definitely Japanese.
Had a friend who was big into Sailor Moon. Now, he was a boy 2 years older than me, so of course I made fun of him for what I perceived to be a girl's cartoon at the time.
I mean, are you wrong? I mean, I've never watched the program, but I'm aware of the main protagonist here. I see this type of shit, and the first thing that comes to my mind is the whole see, this is the stuff I don't get. Like, why is there guys, grown men, that are like, yeah, you know? I mean, perhaps that's an ignorant comment of me to make. You know, like I said, I admit I've never seen the show, you know, but when I see shit like this just does nothing for me. I have to say, you know, it does nothing for me. I don't see the appeal as far as that goes. D.A. Bell writes, I just finished Fist of the North Star Volume 1. The art is fantastic. The writing left me meh. Also, it's a shonen series, a demographic of young male content, I think 10 to 24. Well, I was talking about the movie itself. There's like a Fist. I think that's what it's called. It's Fist. You could probably look it up on YouTube. There's clips. And it had like, I don't know if there was like some controversy around it. There's definitely some controversy around it. And I believe there's 2 different cuts to the film itself because of the level of violence. They have like more of like a censored type version. And then they have the, like, I guess the director's cut or whatever, the more explicit one. But Fist of the North Star. Yeah, and that's one of the only ones I really remember. And I've seen select episodes or random episodes, I should say, of Dragon Ball Z. I couldn't tell you what the story is of Dragon Ball Z. That's all I remember is like, he's over 9,000, you know, that type of shit. You know, the meme worthy type stuff like that. That's all I really remember. But again, like, you know, I just never got into the whole anime thing. And I was never into Transformers either as a kid. I was into Ninja Turtles. I was definitely a big fan of Ninja Turtles. But are Ninja Turtles anime, though? They are ninjas. Technically, they're ninjas. So that would make you think, oh, well, this has got to be some, Oriental type stuff going on here. Which it does have some of that culture in there. But I don't think that it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Ninja Turtles is classified as an anime because it is an American made cartoon. So technically it would be a Western cartoon versus an anime. However, but then again, is anime just a way of saying the style of the animation itself? Like, could you have anime that is produced in the United States and it still would be considered anime? It wouldn't be considered just an animation or just Western cartoon. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is how much I really know about this whole thing, Oh, the manga is pretty violent. Yeah, manga is another thing. Manga, the graphic novels. So there's the graphic novels, but manga, I know, is like a specific type of graphic novel, right? That's like the Eastern influence of the graphic novel. Cowboy. Actually, that's another one. Actually, I will say I actually did watch quite a few episodes of Cowboy Bebop. Mostly because a friend of mine at the time turned me on to the show. I was in high school. I remember that much. I was in high school, and a friend of mine at the time turned me on to the show. And it was on when it was on Adult Swim. When it was on Adult Swim on the Adult Swim channel or whatever. That's when I remember watching episodes of that show. One of my favorite episodes was the one where they're like space bounty hunters, right? And the episode where they had like the red eye drug. I think it was like this drug. It was like this red eye drug or something like that. And I remember that one being pretty badass. Yeah, but see, like I say, there was like this time in my life where I had select encounter with anime, but I have no interest in it. Like now, like where I'm at now, like I don't really care. I just don't really care about the medium itself. It's just a me thing, preference thing. And when it's especially when it's shit like this. What about My Little Pony? That's another one. Grown men who are into My Little Pony. What do they call them? They call them bronies. Are you a brony out there? Admit it. D.A. Bell, what are you? Are you a brony? Don't tell me you're a brony, D.A. Are you? I disavow. If you are, don't admit it. Just keep it to yourself. Don't admit it.
He used to send away for like VHS tapes because I'm old. VHS tapes of like the full episodes that weren't available in the States, and then after that, I did see the Street Fighter 2 animated movie, which ironically had more blood than Mortal Kombat. More recently, I've seen, I watched Assassination Classroom, Steins Gate, just the first series, and I'm working on My Hero Academia. So I don't know that much about anime, but that's going to change. That's what this channel is about. Godzilla Crossing in the back. Yes. So I'm going to do reviews of anime that friends have recommended to me, and I'm going to stick with movies. I'm going to watch series too, but stick with movies. And in the comment section, you're going to get to suggest anime that you'd like to see me review. So please do that.
If you do Fist of the North Star, I should leave a comment right now. There you go. If you do a review on Fist of the North Star, then share it with me and I'll check it out for sure. Anything else?
Do that. But anyway, that's what this channel is all about. I am Noobson, and this is my channel.
Cause I don't know jack squat about anime, but I'm gonna learn.
See, did you see that? Look, see the Sailor Moon? Ah. Anytime I see those little like winky face, big eyes, they're always throwing up the peace sign. It's like think of these like stupid sounds they make. Well, thanks for sharing that. There's a little update for you guys. What do we got? Horace says, check out Ninja Scroll. So Fist of the North Star or Ninja Scroll. Is that an alternate title or is that a different movie? Never watched MLP. Manga is just a comic. Tankobon is the graphic novel equivalent. See, I'm not privy to those things. I appreciate you guys participating in this, though. I'm glad some of you guys know what's going on. Shit, man, be lost without you. It's a nice Ninja Scroll, different movie. Okay, super badass gore action. All right. Well, where was that other one? I saw. Maybe you know it. I think maybe it falls under because one thing I do know is that not all, obviously, with the Cowboy Bebop thing. The Cowboy Bebop, I guess, would be more of like a sci-fi action, I guess, for the genre, if I had to categorize it. But I know that a lot of anime does fall into that either fantastical or kind of like the action oriented, but it's not always like ninja type shit. And I do know that one thing that's pretty popular with some people who watch anime, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like the cyberpunk stuff. And I think that MTV used to do something like that. What was that show on MTV with that broad? There was that broad who would die over Aeon Flux or something like that. Wasn't that an anime? Was that considered an anime? Because that show wasn't bad, I thought, back in the day when I was watching MTV during those times. That wasn't bad. You don't say. Sailor Moon was pretty progressive for its time. Two of the female characters were a couple. Well, isn't that special? That's a good. I think that's a good time to slide into the next segment. Let's talk about some hot topic for content creators. Hot topic for content creators. This is where I pitch a hot topic to you guys, and then you guys turn around and create your own content on said topic. Or else you're always welcome to drop some comments down below or check out any of my previously pitched hot topic videos. What do I have for you guys tonight? Tonight we're going to be talking about a little representation in fiction. That's right. Made them cousins. for the American sensibilities of the time. All right, here we go with a little representation in fiction. And on the that is the topic for tonight. The prompt is representation in fiction, and it's going to be on the subject of special interest groups. We're going to come at this topic from all different types of angles, and so you guys can weigh in and we can kind of embroider this topic together. Tonight, I want to pitch a subject on special interest groups specifically. Okay. People have been forming special interest groups within the writing and publishing sphere for quite some time. And within the last decade or so, the rise of extremely liberal groups like LGBTQIA+, alongside hardcore erotica communities and the like, have prompted the creation of new movements, like the one I'll be addressing tonight. Before I go on, I want to make sure I have my photo here. Now, the reason why I think the concept of special interest groups is such a contentious subject has to do with all the alleged moral outrage that is often expressed, mostly, surprise, surprise, through social media. Individuals take to the internet to state whether they believe people should do this or shouldn't do that. The thing is, all that talk is more or less irrelevant within the creative space, because freedom of speech in artistic forms of expression, such as works of fiction, are protected within the ethical framework of the law. In other words, you're free to preach, bitch, moan, and complain while trying to draw a line in the sand, but you can bet your ass, as soon as you do, there's going to be a group of writers out there ready to cross it. Most people with a brain are aware of this. There's always been those folks who aim to push the boundaries of what's considered socially acceptable. And I will say that fiction, for the most part, depending on the time period and where you live, has served as a safe medium for certain groups to explore those boundaries. It is possible that there are also some special interest groups out there that may think, hey, if what we're doing is wrong, then it would be illegal. And I suppose some people could see that as a sign of having no moral compass. But again, that would make their outrage a metaphysical argument or a metaphysical matter. When it comes to the arts and entertainment, there's only two camps when it comes to getting up in arms over moral issues. There are those who are for freedom of speech, and there are those who are for censorship. So hashtag Protect Clean Fiction is a movement started by a young lady who is fed up with smut being written into books targeted towards young readers. To my surprise, this image has been making the rounds on Twitter. This image that has been making the rounds on Twitter and Instagram has been receiving quite a bit of backlash from adults who come from some of those groups I mentioned earlier. I believe the girl who started this movement is actually a teenager. So to see grown adults coming at her for wanting to organize a group of authors who write clean fiction seems quite sus, if we're to be honest. Many of the responses that I read online were from individuals who write erotica or come from the SJW type crowd, and were trying to accuse this effort as an attempt to censor or shame those who like to write sex on the page. I thought that was pretty rich coming from those who actively engage in cancel culture behavior. The reason why I find this new special interest group so amusing isn't because of the cause itself, but because so many people seem to be missing the point here. The movement isn't about bolstering moral outrage. It's about encouraging people to take action, to do something positive and productive within a creative atmosphere that offers the same freedom of speech protections that all those other special interest groups get to enjoy. I think if a bunch of young individuals feel as though they need to come together and form a special interest group in order to simply enjoy some entertainment that doesn't contain some peculiar fetish, promote kinky behavior, or propagate perverted sensibilities, then I say more power to them. Have fun, kids. I'm going to leave it there for now. I like to hear what you guys have to say about this one. What are your opinions about the formation of special interest groups as it pertains to representation in fiction? Have you heard of hashtag Protect Clean Fiction? And what do you think about that? I think the fact that a teenager is responsible for starting this movement is quite telling in regard to today's societal standards, I have to say. It certainly makes one think, that's for sure. All right, guys, that's it. That's all I got for you tonight. We're going to do the wrap up now. We're going to do the wrap up now, but before we do, yeah. Yeah, and that's just it. One issue about it is the YA thing. We can talk about that for a minute. Thanks for bringing that up. So we're talking about, last time we were talking about so we're talking about representation in fiction, and we were talking about hashtag Protect Clean Fiction. And D.A. Bell writes and says, my question is, was the smut promised in the blurb or the beginning of the book? So for those of you who don't know, the hashtag Protect Clean Fiction movement, if you will, the movement is started by a teenaged author. I don't know if she's published author yet or aspiring author. But who it is, you know, she started this thing on Instagram, Twitter, and is more or less because she was fed up with reading specifically what the whole movement kind of started from, if I remember correctly, is because she was tired of reading YA fiction specifically. So in other words, we weren't talking necessarily about erotica itself. However, there were a lot of people from the erotica writing communities that had something to say, had a bone to pick, if you will, dare I say, with this hashtag movement. They thought that, this seemed like somebody who was trying to censor them, their freedom to write such entertainment. And, I don't know if all of them realized that they were addressing a teenager at the time, which was kind of weird to read online, to see adults coming at a teenager for not wanting to read pornographic type of content. But no, it wasn't. To answer your question, it has to do with YA genre, the YA genre specifically, or category. In other words, she was fed up with reading books that were intentionally marketed to and advertised to a young demographic, which technically it says young adult. But this is why I've always said YA genre, YA as a genre is sus, period. Because, like, what does that even mean, really, when you say a book is YA? It's more of a category. I always saw it as more of a category. Young adult. And when I think young adult, really, I think it's a very, very specific age group. If we're going to say numbers wise, I would say young adult in the sense of 18, 19, 20, 21. Why do I say 18, 19, 20, 21 specifically? Because the age group of 18, 19, 20, 21 is where it's fresh out of high school. All right. That's why there's certain tropes involved with a lot of these YA stories. Thanks for that question, by the way. So there's a lot of these tropes with the YA. Okay. So it's like the characters themselves are younger. They may be in high school, like at the beginning of a series of books or something, but then they're graduating high school. They're dealing with those kind of teenage angst type of issues and whatnot. But it's supposed to be so the reader base that those books are marketed towards can grow up, come of age, if you will, alongside the characters that they're reading about, which is brilliant marketing, but it's not what it has been used for in more recent years. In more recent years, let's blame the millennial women, let's just say. So the millennial women that grew up with a lot of the YA growing up, like the Harry Potters and whatnot, they became authors themselves. And now they want to stay living in that YA time and place that they cherish from their lives, but they want to start including the more adult type themes and spicy, let's just say, type of adult type content. So which leads me to believe that, some of these quote unquote YA writers out here, they're really out of touch. That's what I get from this hashtag protect clean fiction movement, that a lot of these, YA authors out here, they're really out of touch with the youth as far as that goes. That's what I mean by that. It kind of speaks volumes, when a teenager, okay, who may, they're coming of age, they're full of hormones and whatnot. It takes a teenager who's full of hormones and angst to say, whoa, like, we need to calm down on the smut. You know what I mean? So that's why I find this very amusing. So that's what it was about. It was about this teenager and saying, just sick of reading smut in YA fiction specifically, kind of having it sneak under the radar. Yeah, and a lot of people, you know, rational, reasonable human beings hold that same sentiment. You know, if it doesn't, then don't push smut onto others. And there's a fine line there. I think there is. Well, not a fine line, but you know, you know when it's sex on the page. What they're talking about is sex on the page. That's not where the fine line. Where there's a fine line. The fine line is when you start talking about, okay, you want to write YA, write YA, but think of it, look at it as it more of you're writing to a specific age group. And that age group may include teenagers that aren't legally adults, okay, which would be 18, 19, 20, 21, which is technically young adult. But why I was saying it's 18, 19, 20, 21 is because that's when a lot of high schoolers have graduated high school and now they're moving on to higher education. Like if they're going to go to college, typically they go to college directly out of high school, which is why you see a lot of this academia type theme in YA fiction. There's a lot of that, you know, the dark academia or the academic dorm lifestyle type stuff. That's, you know, what kind of goes hand in hand with that category of fiction, because like I say, that's the audience that it's marketed to, not middle-aged white women, you know, who want a little sex on the page, you know, with their wine and cheese, you know. Want their beefcake, want a little beefcake with their wine and cheese, if you will, or cheesecake for that matter. I'm not going to discriminate. And in other forms of media too, huh? So D.A. Bell writes, I watched a video from this guy who talks about contemporary TV shows and movies that are being egregious when it comes to nudity and sex, to the point it's no different than softcore porn. Oh, we used to have Skinamax for that back in the day. If you know, you know, as far as that goes. Yeah. You used to have the premium channels to get that kind of stuff back in the day. And it was very uncommon. But I remember one turning point for like, say, like basic cable. I haven't had cable TV in years, but I do remember there was like this point in when I had like cable TV and watching like Comedy Central. I think Comedy Central was like one of the first networks to start doing this. After a certain hour, you would start hearing language on networks like Comedy Central that you would never have heard on basic cable stations back in the day. Well, technically Comedy Central was an extended cable station. It wasn't like part of the basic package, but still, they would start saying, I remember that, like, it was rare to hear, like, for instance, the word fuck or shit on network television, unless it was actually a premium station meant to show movies, rated R movies and such, like HBO, and stuff like that. So for me, it's no surprise that, you know, that type of stuff might be slipping through the cracks or whatever, but really that's the point that I wanted to make, is that's where there's the fine line between how it's advertised, first and foremost, how it's advertised, and what is considered genuine censorship. So like, I don't think I come from the standpoint, like, I don't think that there needs to be all these fucking trigger warnings on literature and whatnot. That's overkill as far as I'm concerned. Having a whole goddamn index and glossary of trigger warnings in the back of your goddamn novel is you know, has nothing to do with the creative process as far as I'm concerned, or the production, add to the production value in any shape, fashion, or form. You know, I think it's overkill. And I'm telling you right now, it's nothing that I would ever waste my time doing, because it's a fool's fucking errand at the end of the day. Why is it a fool's errand? Because you don't know what people can and can't fucking handle. It's not my job to figure out what the fuck is going to offend you as the viewer or the consumer of my material. Okay. Now, with that being said, I do think that there is a certain degree of responsibility on the publisher's end. Not necessarily saying on the author's end, but if you're a self-published author, then I guess you kind of double as the publisher. But there is a certain degree of responsibility on the publisher's end in the way in which they market the work. Okay, whether that be TV shows that are being produced or books that are being published. And for me, like what I do is kind of like a catch-all general warning label, if you will. Like my work is going to contain provocative themes and may have some graphic imagery. Okay, so that should tell anybody with a fucking brain that my shit is not for children. Okay, but I also sympathize with the other side of this, where, you know, it's parents that are out there and they want to be able to trust that they can send their kids to school, and their kids have free access to the school library, and the kids can just willy-nilly on their own on their own free time after school or during the day, you know, in between classes or whatever, go to the library and they can check out books from their own school library that have graphic and explicit descriptions of sexual activity. You know what I mean? And as a parent, I could see where parents would be very frustrated with that, you know, very frustrated with that it's like, okay, well, you know, you want to try to, you know, a parent could be trying to raise their child in a certain way and under certain beliefs. And now you have these externalities kind of weaseling their way in to the mix and having to deal with that. You know, it could create a lot of difficulties, conflict, whatnot, you know. So, you know, there is that aspect of it too that I think, you know, deserve at least to have a bit of, you know, sympathy from people, and try to, at least at the very least, try to understand where people are coming from, that it's not coming from a place of censorship in the form of like, oh, your book cannot exist. If you write erotica, you cannot publish erotica. You cannot sell erotica on the open market. Like, no, I don't think that at all. I think I am an extremist, actually, when it comes to freedom of speech. I would be labeled by a lot of people as an extremist in that sense. But, you know, because I think that people have the freedom to write whatever, especially when we're talking about fiction here, in the form of representation in fiction. You can write whatever characters you want. You can have those characters do whatever you want, say whatever you want, any kind of crazy cockamamie plot that your brain can come up with. Fucking more power to you. Take it, push it to the limit as far as that goes. You know? That's where I stand with it. But then when you take the artist hat off, the creator cap off, and you put on the business hat, like, if, in other words, if you're like an indie and you're doing it that way, and you have to have some semblance of, you got to take some semblance. I'm not necessarily saying that you should be held legally accountable, you know, if your material just so happens to get in the hands of children. I mean, there's also distributors that are involved here as well. Okay, so it's not just on the author, it's not just on the publisher. There's also distributors and vendors that are involved in this as well. So like libraries, if it's a library, libraries should not, libraries should be held accountable to some degree as well. Like, why do libraries just have pornographic material just open to the public that like literally anybody of any age could just allowed to walk into a library and check and maybe not necessarily check out, but they have access to, in other words, they can pull it off the shelf and they can check it out while they're in the library. Now, I haven't been to a library in a while, so I don't know if that's true, but I'm just saying if that is true, that adult material, then maybe the libraries need to be taking a look in the mirror as far as that goes. Why is there pornographic material just out in the open like that for anyone to just kind of browse and check out while they're in the library? Shouldn't that be in like a special room, so to speak? You know what I mean? The adult only section of the library, just like how like in adult like bookstores that used to exist, like you'd have to be at least like 18 years of age to go into those types of places. So there's that. DA Bell writes, agreed. Market your content properly to let the consumer know what they're about to get into. In terms of the content, it's like I also don't think that you need to give away everything that happens in your book either. You don't have to get into the specifics in your blurb. But certainly, like I would say, it's just having at least some semblance of, dare I say, common sense. What does that even mean really in this day and age at this point? But I think, you kind of get it at where I'm coming from. If you have a fucking rape scene in your book, then yeah, you might want to say, you don't have to get specific with it, but just say like, this book is meant for adults. That's what I leave it at. Like if you're an adult and you need trigger warnings, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Stick to the picture books. Stick to the children's section. Okay. Yeah. See, I don't know that. I don't know. I've never gone looking for that type of material at a library, so I don't know. I'm just saying if they do. But then again, the school libraries, look at what's going on at the school libraries, up in arms over book bans. But when they say book bans, all they're saying is books that should or should not be allowed in elementary school libraries and up. Just school libraries in general. So when they talk about book bans, they're not talking about books that should not exist or should not be allowed to be published, which would be an actual literal form of censorship, like Gestapo level censorship. They're talking about just books not being available in libraries where children are browsing the material. So that's like an ongoing debate of where do you draw the line there, because I remember receiving sexual education in the 6th grade. I wasn't even in middle school yet when they started, flashing penises and vaginas on a overhead projector and talking about those sorts of things, However, I want to say that I do recall I'm pretty sure I do recall there being like a permission slip or something like that needed to be signed in order to participate in that. And I believe they, at the time, at least in my school, I believe they did 2 separate classrooms. So like they did a classroom for the boys and they did a classroom for the girls, and they kind of handled that separately, if I remember correctly. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about the whole censorship thing, representation in fiction, special interest groups, this hashtag protect clean fiction? And where do you draw the line between simply just trying to enjoy clean fiction and downright invasive forms of censorship? All right. Now let's get into the wrap up. And before we get into the wrap up, I want to put on some theme music for you guys. Yep, some theme music. Let me set up this theme music here. Theme music. The year. Are you ready? The theme. Here's the theme music for tonight. The year is 1965. And you find yourself standing in a big long line as you wait for checkout at your local Kmart. Meanwhile, the little old French lady standing in front of you talks your ear off about all the blue light specials she's scored since the gimmick's inception. It doesn't take long before you know the name of every member of her family tree, as well as some select individuals from her extended family that she has her reservations about, but at the end of the day, she believes they mean well. I yeah. Oh, wow, you don't say. Oh, okay. Yep. Now, Sally, she's the one who broke her arm. Oh, no, that's Susie. Sally's the one who went to band camp. Gotcha. Okay. Me? No. No, I've never been married. Yeah. I don't mean to interrupt, but the line behind you is moving. All right, let's get into some comments, shall we? Let's see who stopped by the channel. All right. All right, speaking of the devil, we got Horace Blood Moon here. Stopping by. He was this was from back in June. Indie Publishing just says thanks for your support, Jonathan. Right on, brother. No problem at all. Moving right along, we got Nicole's Bookish Nook. Nicole's Bookish Nook says, oh boy, I wouldn't say I am prolific, but yes, Obsidian Murders is out now. Yes, Nicole, new release on her end. And I would say you're pretty prolific. You have quite a bit published, Nicole, between your poetry books and your novels and short stories. I'd say you're pretty prolific. But Obsidian Murders, yeah, I'm gonna make sure I add that one to the queue, Nicole. And if you are interested in coming on the show, if you want to talk about it, just shoot me a message. We'll set that up. All right, Nicole's Bookish Nook again. This is from last week. She goes on to say the DNF tag became so popular, people didn't know what was going on, and it all got lost in the grapevine, apparently. Yeah, there was a little bit of a mix-up between, was it called the DNF tag? It was actually called the How Do We Rate Our Books tag. I remember that. And then finally, she goes on, she says, it is totally okay to be middle of the road because it's impossible to be great or fantastic at everything. Not logical to say you're great at everything, Jonathan. Well, I say you gotta strive for greatness, right? What are you trying to say here? Are you saying that if you were to rate your own book, Nicole, that you would be okay with giving it 3 stars as the author? First off, I think we both would agree that it takes a certain type of individual to rate their own work. But beyond that, I think most people would wonder why you'd rate your work anything less than 5 stars. But I would be remiss if I didn't suggest the idea that it's almost within your best interests as the author, believe it or not, to give your work a 1-star rating just for shits and giggles to see how it stirs the pot. Because if someone reads your work out of sheer curiosity, but then has the audacity to turn around and complain about it on social media, you could always confront them and say, hey, I told you so, you dummy. That's the live stream for this week, ladies and gentlemen. I hope y'all had some fun. I hope y'all discovered something new. But don't fret, because guess what? I will be back here for you next week, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a good week. Oh, hell yeah. That's my guy. Yeehaw! We got to support us, buy his product. Buy.
This offended my sensibilities.